George Harrison gave Eric Clapton a guitar in 1973 and said nothing. What followed wasn't a friendly jam, but a 2-hour duel. They played without speaking, battling through their music over the same woman, George's wife, Pattie Boyd. Everyone watching could feel the tension, and though no one said it, they all knew Eric had won. But this story didn't start that day. It began years earlier, with friendship, love, betrayal, and heartbreak that changed both their lives forever. George Harrison was born on February 25, 1943, in a tiny house in Liverpool. His father was a bus conductor, and his mother helped in a shop. Their home had no garden and only one small fire to keep them warm. When George's mother was pregnant, she used to play Indian music on the radio, hoping it would calm her baby. That same sound would later become a major part of George's life. At 13, George heard Elvis Presley's Heartbreak Hotel for the first time, and it changed everything. He became obsessed with guitars and practiced every day. By 16, he quit school to work as an apprentice electrician but spent all his free time playing music. Soon after, he joined the Beatles. At just 17, he went with them to Hamburg, Germany, where they played in rough nightclubs. He was too young to be there, so he lied about his age. Eventually, the police found out and deported him. In 1962, the Beatles replaced drummer Pete Best with Ringo Starr, and everything began to take off. George wrote his first song, Don't Bother Me, in 1963 while sick in bed. It made it onto a Beatles album, but his songs were often overlooked next to Lennon and McCartney's work. The band's fame exploded, and George became exhausted. During filming for Help in 1965, he discovered the sitar, an Indian instrument, and fell in love with its sound. He introduced it into Western music with Norwegian wood, creating something entirely new. By the late 1960s, George felt distant from the rest of the band. He was drawn to Indian spirituality and used LSD, while the others focused on fame and money. Tensions rose, and in January 1969, George briefly quit the Beatles, fed up with Paul's controlling attitude and John's addiction. Meanwhile, Eric Clapton was living a very different life. Born in 1945, he grew up believing his grandmother was his mother and his real mother was his sister. When he discovered the truth at 9 years old, it crushed him. He found comfort in music and got his first guitar at 13. By 15, he was obsessed with the blues, practicing for hours daily. In his teens and 20s, Eric moved between bands like the Yardbirds and Cream. His talent made him a star, but fame also brought pressure, addiction, and heartbreak. He began using heroin and alcohol heavily, eventually collapsing from ulcers caused by his drinking. Despite success with songs like Sunshine of Your Love, Eric was miserable. George and Eric's paths crossed in 1968 when George invited him to play on While My Guitar Gently Weeps. The two became close friends. Their friendship deepened through tours, late-night parties, and hours spent playing together. But when George's wife, Pattie Boyd, entered the picture, everything changed. In 1970, at a quiet house party, Eric confessed to George, "I'm in love with your wife." Pattie was shocked. George demanded she choose between them, but she stayed with her husband. Eric poured his pain into letters and the legendary song Layla, written for her. The song became a rock classic and a symbol of forbidden love. George's marriage was already falling apart. He was having affairs, including one with Ringo Starr's wife, Maureen. Pattie was devastated. By 1974, she finally left George and began a relationship with Eric. Their secret love became public, and the friendship between George and Eric collapsed. The moment that symbolized their rivalry came in 1973 when George handed Eric a guitar instead of confronting him with words. They played side by side for 2 hours, angry, emotional, and silent. It was music instead of violence, pain expressed through strings. Everyone who saw it knew something powerful had happened. After Pattie left, George poured his emotions into sad songs like So Sad, while Eric's Layla immortalized their love triangle. George and Pattie divorced in 1977. 2 years later, she married Eric. Amazingly, George attended the wedding and even joked that he and Eric were now husbands-in-law. Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr joined them, and they all jammed together one last time. But Eric's demons followed him into the marriage. His drinking and cheating destroyed their relationship. In 1986, he had a child with another woman. Patty finally left him for good in 1987, saying she had lived in fear of his temper. Years later, George and Eric found a way to work together again. Eric played on George's 1987 album Cloud 9, and though their friendship was never the same, they had made peace. When George died of cancer in 2001, Eric organized the concert for George at the Royal Albert Hall. Surrounded by friends like Paul, Ringo, and Tom Petty, Eric played While My Guitar Gently Weeps Again, this time not as a rival, but as a tribute to his old friend. He could barely hold back tears. That night, the guilt and pain of decades finally seemed to fade away, replaced by love and respect that had survived it all.